My name is Carl-Henrik Brogaard. I'm the last author of this presentation concerning NKT cell inhibition in diabetes. Several animal models exist for type 1 diabetes. The first one developed was in Canada, the BB rat. A few years later, from Japan, we have the NOD mice. And we have also type 2 diabetes model called the GK rat. These studies concern a monoclonal antibody raised from a BB rat, which we developed in 1982. This monoclonal antibody was studied in vitro for almost 20 years and show up to be completely explicit specific for the pancreatic beta cell surface. In the beginning of 2000, people at Harvard University saw that in vivo this antibody behaved specific and could actually image the pancreatic beta cell in vivo. More recently, we start to speculate if this monoclonal autoantibody could have anything to do with the onset and pathogenesis of type 1 diabetes. Already in 1989, we knew that this antibody reacted with sulfatide, but we couldn't understand the meaning of this finding. So more recently, people started to become interested in the function of NKT cells linked to onset of diabetes. And in the NOD mice, it has been found by several groups that NKT cells are deficient or somehow inhibited during onset of diabetes. So we thought that perhaps our monoclonal antibody had anything to do with the NKT function. We then set up a functional in vitro study to show that if IC2 had any effect on NKT cells. And here in this figure done in vitro, we found an almost 100% inhibition by IC2 to the several NKT cell lines. The study here is done with the NKT type 1 cell line. We have also studied NKT type 2 cell line, which is certainly also involved in onset of diabetes. What is the molecular meaning of this? The NKT cells is stimulated by a complex between CD1D and certain glycolipids. The NKT cell type 1 is stimulated by ceramides linked to CD1, and the NKT type 2 is stimulated by sulfatides linked to CD1D. So the first thing to do is, of course, to study if there's any CD1D expression on beta cell, and that was not known until recently. And we have found that both on primary beta cells, we find CD1D expression, but also on several of our beta cell lines. So this confirmed that the requisite for a CD1 glycolipid complex to stimulate beta cells actually exists on the beta cell. If it is so that the IC2 has an inhibitory effect on NKT cells and could then be involved in the pathogenesis, then we thought, can we somehow inhibit or block this inhibition? And this is theoretically possible if you have an anti-idiotypic antibody. So we have started to raise anti-idiotypic antibodies. And this figure here shows that we obtained such anti-idiotypic antibody which had an affinity to our monoclonal antibody. Next project is started now, where we try to develop monoclonal idiotypic antibodies against IC2. And if these have some preventive effect on diabetes, and maybe even a cure effect on diabetes, still have to be proven. This study will be done in BB rats in collaboration with a group in Germany and a group in Sweden, and will be done next year. Thank you very much for your attention.